each other around the applause. This is a great class. One of the reasons why we started this conference is just this, to bring people together, to network and meet up with old friends. And the organization is really growing, so we're all really happy that you're here today. I'm going to give a little brief history of the Indiana Clay Conference, and then I'm going to turn some time over to Ted Neal, our on-site liaison, for some more announcements. So many of you know that the Indiana Clay Conference was founded in 2019. Myself and Justin Rothshank are the co-founders. And we had a conversation at the Michiana Pottery Tour when I first moved to the state of Indiana in 2016. And out of that conversation was an idea was formed to start the Indiana Clay Conference. Justin, my partner in crime, is not here, but he will be here tomorrow. So Justin and I are really happy to welcome you here today. So the inaugural conference was on my campus at Purdue Fort Wayne in 2019. We had Martha, Sarah, Matt, and Malcolm. Malcolm also was our keynote speaker in 2019. 2021 was at the Indianapolis Arts Center. We had Jen Allen, Soji Satake. They were both our keynote speakers. We had Wes Brown and James Schallgarter. Last conference we had at IU Bloomington. Chase and Malcolm were the on-site liaisons. We had Pete Pinnell, Vonda Hewson, Andrea Keys-Connell, Stephanie Galley, Brian Harper. And before I turn the time over to Ted, one of the main tenets of our conference is we want to have our presenters and those that are speaking have a distinct and unique tie to the state. We have Bill here, who's our keynote speaker, who definitely is a Hoosier. So I'm going to turn the time over to Ted. Ted Neal and I have been planning this conference for over 2 years. So I want to bring Ted up. He's going to give us some more information.
Thanks to everybody, and I know we'll probably say this a few times, but Seth, especially Justin, and all the planning committee, and all of you for committing to come here with us for a couple of days. We appreciate it. Put the fruits of our labor to come to fruition. So I'm just going to give you, you probably already aware of representatives are Sam Chumley, Richard James, Susan Lindsay, Sarah Anderson, and Bill's our keynote. And I just want to give you sort of a little bit of overlay of the campus, so you can sort of in this building, so you can navigate around should you want to wander a little bit. So we are in the LA Pittenger Student Center, and this is a map of the room. So we are currently, switch us up, but we're in the ballroom. So the other jury presenters, if they're demonstrators, they're down the hall in Cardinal A&B, as well as our vendors. And then just through that, you can get there 2 ways. You can go through this hallway, or you can go through the room or around the side. It's our forum room where our jury presentations will be. Okay, so that's where the bulk of the events are happening during the conference. The tally, if you haven't been downstairs in the first floor, has agreed to stay open for our event. So for lunch, you only have to go down 1 floor. There's a Starbucks there that will also be open from 8 a.m. until 2:30, and the Tally Food Court will be open from 10:30 to 2:30 for lunch. So you don't have to leave the building. It's a very nice service. And we will, however, have the same food and coffee and stuff that we have today, tomorrow morning as well. So if you need a refresher on your caffeine, you can go down during the day to Starbucks. It's directly underneath us. So for the other events, the exhibition and the reception that's this evening is in the Art and Journalism building. This little map shows the location of where we are on the south end. If you go due north 2 blocks, you will walk into the Art and Journalism parking lot. Okay, due north, that's right here. There's a museum. I was going to try to promote the museum, but they're actually closed because of our fall break. But if you're ever back on campus, fabulous. Sorry. I thought it was going to be open. It's so fabulous. You get a picture of it? Oh, wrong direction. So if you haven't been to the Art and Journalism building, this is a view of it from the 10th floor in the Teachers College. And just look for the kilns in the parking lot. There's a ramp right next to the kilns that leads into the back door. And as soon as you walk in that door, you'll see ceramics. And on display is some of our student work collection, and then the next two cases of the high school teacher exhibition. And then if you go down around the hallway, I know you can't see this map, but down around this hallway is the Ned Maria Greiner Art Gallery, where the State of Play exhibition is. That reception, remember, is this evening. Our medals professor and gallery coordinator, Jessica Calderwood, will be sitting in the gallery today, starting at 4 until the reception ends, and tomorrow at 4. So if you want to sneak in there early before we're all there for the reception and see the work, you can go as early as 4 o'clock. And we will also have food at the reception. And then if you come at about 6:30, I'm going to have the studio open, and I'll be there. If you want to sort of walk through, and I'll give you a little tour, or you can just browse the studio and see our film yards, and I'll leave my office open. I've got a pretty nice ceramics collection if you want to peruse that as well. So that's the 6:30. Anyway, big thank you to all these folks that have helped put this together. I know when Seth and Justin started this, they took on the bulk of that work, and I think we're getting smarter as we do this, and we're spreading that workload out amongst the educators and others that are in the state. So anyway, again, thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you for all your hard work to give this conference here on Ball State, so we're grateful for that. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome my longtime friend, Bill Griffith, who's a Hoosier, as our keynote speaker. I have a formal introduction that I'm going to give you, but I want to give you a little bit of a small anecdotal story about how awesome Bill is. I met Bill in 2006 when I was a graduate student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We were sitting at an NCECA conference, and I was sitting with my professor, mentor, Gail Kendall. And Bill Griffith just so happened to sit right in front of us. And I remember Gail tapped Bill on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Bill, I want to introduce you to one of my students, Seth Green. He's a graduate student." And I remember that. And then on the way home from that conference, we actually sat on the plane next to each other. It just was serendipitous that way. We had a really long conversation about that. And Gail later told me, she's like, "Bill is a really important person in our field. You should get to know him." And at that time, I was young and up and coming. I didn't realize how important Bill is, but I do now. Bill has made an amazing contribution to our field. I'm going to read some of his accolades here in just a minute. One more thing, he also, when I was teaching at Morehead State University for my first teaching job, he traveled from Gatlinburg to Morehead State to visit with me to set up a scholarship program for my students to go to Airmont School of Arts and Crafts. And I continue that partnership today with Airmont, and Bill is a big part of the reason why that program exists. So I know that many of you out here in the audience are participants in that, and if you're not, talk to Bill. He knows how to get that done. So with that, I'll give a formal introduction to Bill. Bill is a ceramic artist, educator, and former Airmont School of Arts and Crafts administrator. Bill's functional and sculptural ceramics continue to be exhibited and published in national, juried, invitational exhibitions. His work is included in private and public collections, including the Tennessee State Museum, the Arkansas Museum of Fine Art, Asheville Art Museum in North Carolina, Airmont's permanent collection, San Angelo Museum of Art in Texas, Hanna Museum of Art in Indiana, the Tokonami Cultural Museum in Japan, and the Jingdezhen Ceramic Institute in China. Bill is active as a visiting artist, juror, and workshop leader for craft schools, universities, art centers, and craft centers throughout the United States. He is a recipient of the Tennessee Arts Commission Individual Artist Fellowship. In 2018, the National Council on Education for the Ceramic Arts awarded him the Outstanding Achievement Award for his contributions to the ceramic field. Please join me in welcoming Bill Griffith.
Well, thanks. Seth, that was nice. Starting to tear up there. I'm really old. I wanted to start off by thanking Ted and Seth. They asked me over a year ago when I first applied, and then I thought about it. Seth called me back, and I thought, yeah, I am a Hoosier. So keep it great. Before I start talking and tell you what I'm going to talk about, I want to take a picture of you because you all look alert now, but after my talk, I'm going to actually do a video and I'll post it on Instagram. So, can you look? Look like you're really interested. Oh my God. Oh, you're also high IQ looking. So you're wondering why I'm not at the podium. I developed podium phobia at Aeromont. That was a joke. I didn't know it. For 34 years I worked at Aeromont, and I had to greet people at the podium and talk and lecture. I always felt I was preaching to people. And so the last couple times I've spoken at conferences, I've requested a chair. So I think it makes it a little more intimate. Like we're having a conversation, and that's what I'm going to do today, have a conversation with you about a couple of things I want to talk about. So, I am a Hoosier. I realized in preparing for this that I spent half my life in Indiana. 18 years in South Bend, where I grew up and went to high school, and any vendors here? This will take an hour. And then I went to Indiana State, ISU Sycamores. And then I landed a great job teaching ceramics in Connersville, Indiana. And so I added that up, and it was like half my age. It was like 36 years of being in Indiana. I got lucky, and craft schools was the other half of my life. So I spent 34 years working at Aeromont as the program director and assistant director, and then teaching at craft schools, attending craft schools, and working at craft schools. So that's how I got to, I think that's why, what I want to talk about is connections and community. So that's kind of the theme of, and really this is amazing. Aeromont just hosted Utilitarian Clay. There was just under 200 people there. I refer to it as a Clay Love Fest. This is another Clay Love Fest. And I know their Michiana Pottery Tour was just last weekend, and that was another Clay Love Fest. So we are just a big Clay Love Fest. Trying. Okay. Bear with me. If you can't hear me, let me know, and we can get a different microphone. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about history. Has anyone been to the Hahn Museum of Indiana Art? If you have, raise your hand. Not too many. Okay, this is important. This mansion is like 16,000 feet. This building was built in 1904. It was at the World's Fair in St. Louis. It was moved by train to Lafayette by a couple. Well, it has. The owners, Ellie and Bob Hahn, were collecting Indiana painting, and then just 10 years ago, they started to collect pottery and clay from Indiana artists, and there's over 650 pieces of ceramic art. So if you live near Lafayette, you need check it out. I wanted so I contacted the Honda, and I said, I'm going to be at Ball State talking, and I want to talk a little bit about the history. So Ellie sent me a list of some of the historic pieces that they have, and I think they're very, very valid. I want to talk about the vitality and history of Indiana clay. This is the oldest piece they have by a man named David Vance from Springport, Indiana. It's ceramic pine cones, and it's painted with green paint. Anybody from Purdue here? Anyone? Well, this Laura Fry, she started the ceramics program at Purdue. She was educated for liquid pottery in Cincinnati, and she was hired as an industrial arts teacher at Purdue for 29 years, and she led the art program and started the ceramics program. This piece is actually a piece she did at the liquid pottery. She actually patented an atomizer. She was the first one to do some spraying for liquid. This is a great story. I lived 20 miles, and Connersville was 20 miles from Cambridge City. Has anyone heard of the Overbeck sisters? They're extremely, really popular, and they contributed 40 years to the history of Indiana clay. The four sisters lived in a house in a studio, and on my drive up here, I cut over from Connersville and went to the museum at the public library in Cambridge City. They have 700 or 800 pieces in the museum there. I wanted to bring one or two pieces. They've been featured on Antique Roadshow. This piece in the corner, 156, it was found in a flea market in Indianapolis, purchased for $6. And you can see what it recently went for, $43,700. So be on the lookout for it. But I really want to say it's only 30 miles from here. Cambridge City is right on Interstate 40, just south of here. Also, in talking to the curator just yesterday, she said there's a bigger collection in Elkhart, Indiana. At the Elkhart, I think I have it. Elkhart Midwest Museum of American Art features a room dedicated to the Overbeck sisters. So there you go. Let's go to IU. Yay! Karl Marx received a degree in chemistry from Indiana University. Then he got interested in pottery and he apprenticed in Brown County in Nashville, Indiana. Then he went to Ohio State just to take a few ceramic classes. And then he moved back to Brown County, and IU hired him. He was the first. He started the ceramics program at Indiana University. What I find even more interesting is IU didn't have any ceramic equipment or supplies, so they purchased everything from Carl, and he brought it from his home studio and started the program at IU. He has a really, really rich legacy. He worked with Hamada and Leach. And doing some research, there's a lot of Muncie pottery. Muncie pottery right here was only 40 years life, and they made pottery for the masses, but art pottery, they call it art pottery, one of a kind. They really produced a lot of pottery for L.S. Maris and which is now called Macy's, and Marshall Fields. It doesn't exist anymore during the Great Depression, the shortage of gas. Let's hear it for Amico. Amico saved my butt as a high school teacher many times. They're so generous. When you teach a workshop, Amico is very generous. So I went to their website and found some history things that they published the first lesson plans for art teachers. They made the first electric kiln for school and studio use. The first electric potter's wheel, even though this is a standing kick wheel. This one, they began the workshop series for teachers at John Harris School of Art. Doesn't that look like a fun workshop? struggle with family. And this is great. We first left free place to the industry. Running down said you can see have some of these bags. And here's my favorite. First traveling workshop. With a big Volkswagen. The Hahn Museum has a lot of work of Richard Keeler. Richard actually got his degree at DePaul University and his master's at Indiana University in education, and then he taught high school. What I love about finding out about the leaders of our historic field is that they were art teachers in public schools. And that always brings my bells. I love that. Richard with his wife Marge, which I was told in the information I read that they produce over 10,000 pots in a year. Did anyone ever meet Richard Keeler? I never met him, but, well, good. Caroline has pieces in his collection. And how can we not talk about Marvin Bartel, professor of arts at Ocean College? So many great potteries continue to come out of Ocean. I never met Marvin Bartel, but Caroline has a piece of his in the collection. How many of you may have studied with Marvin or felt him personally? And Justin and Dick Lehman, there was a lot of great things going on in Ocean. When I taught at Connersville, the first pottery I ever toured was Bethel Pottery. It was just, 10 miles from here, 10? Or close. And Alan Patrick was the owner of Bethel Pottery. And the person I met when I bought my first piece of pottery from Bethel Pike, guess who wrapped my piece of pottery? Matthew Metz. Matthew Metz went to Ball State and got his degree there, undergraduate. And he worked as kind of an apprentice at Bethel Pottery. This is my teacher, Dick Hayes. I have a story at Indiana State University. Nick was only 25 when I was 18. And I wanted to take ceramics because I had done it for 4 years in high school, but you couldn't take ceramics unless you had all the foundations. So someone said, go talk to Dick Hayes, he may let you in. So I went and talked to him, and I told him I really wanted to continue taking pottery. I was an R&M major, and I was a freshman, and he said, can you throw an 8-inch cylinder? And I looked at him and I said, depends on how much wood I'm using. I think he said smart ass. But he let me in, and it opened my eyes to so much more than I had been exposed to as a high school teacher. He was doing lusters, he was doing flocking, he was doing sculpture. And so that just opened my world. So I took 4 years with him and I became an art education major with a minor in ceramics sciences of the cave. Willis Dean Davis graduated undergraduate in art education at DePaul University. He was there on a basketball scholarship, and he started graduate school at Indiana University, and then he got his master's at Miami, Ohio University in Oxford, Ohio. That's where I met him when I was getting my master's in art education in ceramics. And he was real instrumental in mentoring me. I was insecure as a teacher and as an artist. And he really told me it was important to be an effective art teacher. You should be a good practicing artist. And I always took that to heart. And it kept me in the studio. And it helped motivate myself and my students. George Tillock was my first graduate instructor at Ball State. He was right out of Cranbrook, and he taught 2 years here at Ball State. I drove from Connersville with some other people who took a 2-night class, night class, and he then went to Kansas City Art Institute and finished up his career there. What George turned me on to were two things. He told me that I could get free fiber brick from the Ball Jar Company. They were tearing down beehive kilns, and I wanted to build a Korean trench build with my high school students. So we took a truck and we went to Muncie, and we loaded up 2 or 3 truckloads back and forth, and we built a Korean trench build. He also loaned me the book Kilns by Daniel Rose, which I didn't know existed. When we built that kiln at Connersville High School, it still stands as the longest disc fire in the world. We never reached any big crowds, but kids kept bringing wood. And how could I not grow up in South Bend and not talk about Bill Kramer? He lasted 49 years in the art and ceramics department. I never met him until after I was at Belmont, but I would sneak in the old field house when I was in high school and when I would go home and visit my family. And I would sneak over to that Notre Dame just to see the amazing things that were being made out of clay and Notre Dame. Byron Temple, does anyone know that name? It should be a lot of you. Byron Temple graduated from Ball State and the Art Institute of Chicago. He grew up in Centerville, Indiana, on a farm. And that's where his love of utilitarian pottery was born. He apprenticed with Bernard Leach and then moved back to New Jersey, where he had an illustrious career. And he ended his career, I think, in Louisville. I don't know how many of you know Scott Schaefer. He's kind of a hermit, but he lived in Centerville. He kind of kept, he was the father of Centerville, and I met him at a farmer's market in Connersville, and we connected, and so the summers I would have did an informal apprenticeship with him. I learned so much about production pottery. I learned how to punch mill and how to weigh clay and make mugs exactly alike, and how to make 30 handles and put them on in an hour, and I had never done that before in academia. So Scott and I formed a nice friendship, and he kind of kept the Byron Temple history alive in Centerville. Unfortunately, he just died last year, I think it was. So here's a little bit about me in my own teaching and my artwork. This house is where I lived for 11 years outside of Congressville. I drove by it yesterday, and it's exactly the same. If you see that propane tank, I put it there. In 1984, it's still there. I don't know if it lives there. But Scott and I built a kiln, a 30 cubic foot down draft. And I had a friend in the boat shop in California. They were really and I have to tell you, I had a moment of nostalgia. There's something about corn and wheat and harvesting at this time of year in the light, the fall color and the fall light. I just had that. It's embedded in my genetic makeup from Indiana. And I almost had a little tear when I was driving up. It's amazing what they'll do for extra credit. How could I not talk about basketball in this lecture? Hoosier hysteria. It's like religion in March. And when I taught at Congressville my first year, Congressville won the state and had a boys' state championship. Not once, but they did it again in '78. We never went to class for a week. We just watched reruns of the game. So I threw this in because I never went back to the high school until 5 years ago. I did this mural with my advanced clay students, and it hung in the lobby of the office area. And I always wondered if it was still there, and I went back to photograph it. The man on the left is the principal now, but he was a student when he was a sophomore. He's a principal. I couldn't believe it. Just great memory. So talking about connections and opportunities, when I was a high school student, one of my students was a foreign exchange student from Japan. She found out I was going to Japan to a residency in Tokoname. And she told me that she had to come and visit me. That her father was a design instructor at a university in Hokkaido. And so I got brave and I sent him slides of my wood-fired work and my resume, and I asked him if he knew any potters that I could visit while I was in Japan. So he arranged for me to live with two potters, two guys in the white. They both fire with wood. And I lived with each one of them for about 3 weeks to 4 weeks, and then I traveled by myself and visited other campsites. But I put this slide on the right because it's an oil lamp I made, production, and I sold 100 of these at $12 a pop on my flight and trip to Japan. And the piece next to the oil lamp is a piece I made when I moved to airline fire in the Hanagama workshop. And you can see the inspiration that these formed. So here's a few photos of my experiences living in Indiana. I knew Barnes really well, but I didn't know the other architecture of Shinto shrines and temples. So these are things I was looking at while living in Japan and traveling. And these are some things that inspired me to make some new work that I'd never made before. I love these water basins. And every temple, I love these rocks that were representative islands, and the gravel that was white in patterns was reflecting water. I thought that was so beautiful. So here's some sculpture that I made, fired in wood hills, inspired by some of those basins and other things. I'll just go through these. The majority of them are no larger than 18 inches high, and most of them are all fired in wood kilns, primarily Irma's Hanagama. So I started traveling and going to different, what I would call indigenous architecture, and photographing things that were of interest to me: doorways, textures, rock formations, entryways. Some of these were in Peru. This was Machu Picchu. This was more recently, 3 years ago, in Italy on the left, and this is outside of Mexico in San Miguel de Allende. My friend Joe Naro and I visited. I just thought these were beautiful, and they were used to smelt silver. Furnaces, but I looked at them as sculpture and architecture. So here's some pieces. And these are kind of old, 10 to 15 years. I'm a slab guy. I haven't thrown much except when we do empty bowls, I'll throw them. Slabs slow me down. And there's something contemplative about building with slabs. And I could sure form for a weekend and be happy with a lot. This is a cathedral in Quito, Ecuador, and Joe and his wife, Mary, and I think Richard Griffith was with us, but no one was there. We just went in. We knew they were doing some construction, and we didn't know what the word Peligroso meant, so we kept going up. And we walked all the way to the top. We kept going up and up, and at the very top of that peak where that round little rosette window is, that was what we were walking over the axe of the buttress of the church. We were way up there. And I snapped this photo because I thought it was so beautiful, perspective and looking in, looking out. And so these are some pieces made from that inspiration. When I see things like this online, I just find them so trying to charge and they inspire me, make me want to get back into making sculpture. This was a piece that was fired in the trade mill in Maryland with Ted when he built it, probably 5 years ago. And this is the origami kiln. It's 18 feet long, 5 feet wide, 4 feet high. And I must have fired it 30 times during my, maybe not 30, 20 times during my tenure there. Now, this is what it looks like on the inside. You load it from the back, stack it, and you stroke it from the side and the front. And this is a piece I kept. It kind of resembles, reflects the movement of flame and ash. And so I've always kept that one. This is way back from 1990, but I kept it. I want to show you some pots that I've made. Lately I've been making pots and teaching workshops with slab making, pottery, and I really like function. I really strive for craftsmanship and form. And I love teaching beginners, primarily beginners, because they're really excited. I really like teaching beginners who just come out of therapy from being on the wheel. They love making it go in 10 minutes. It's century. And I love playing with forms to create architecture or negative space. So sometimes these are presentation pieces, but they're playful and you can arrange them differently. This is the last piece I made just for this show. I felt I wasn't, everything I see on Instagram is so colored and transfers and patterns and decals, and I thought, really neat, here's the color when you work. I got gold with the color. I want to end my talk by showing 5 or 6 slides of craft school experiences. It's been a big part of my life. And I want to talk about the community of craft schools and why we go. And where, the first time I went to a craft school, Dick Hay told me, I called him and I said, I think I'm shriveling as an artist. I love teaching, but I haven't touched clay in 2.5 years. And he said, go to Haystack. I said, what's Haystack? Well, he went there because he graduated from Alfred. So I drove my Ford Pinto from Indiana to Maine, and I was in a 3-week workshop with Haystack. And I found that I found my tribe. I was with people, and we would talk till 2 in the morning, and then start up again and make clay. And so it was so strange because I loved my job as a high school teacher, but I never found anyone that was we could really connect with deeply in that way in the play. And so that started me out going to undergrad school. So I have to talk a little bit about Caroline, because it's been my life for 34 years. This is the pottery studio, the kiln room. There's another hand building. So Caroline is a good play program. Caroline hires great artists. Ted, you were just here, that was last year. I'm loading the train. I'm trying to get brownie points for Justin. And that's the new train kiln. Well, not too new. Ted built 2 kilns. Caroline built this salt and train. Caroline gave me this image. I said, you have a slide of Ted. And he was just a utilitarian. So Caroline gave me this slide of Ted with all these women. And I thought, either the train kiln or Ted is a chip magnet. Must be. And this has been so inspiring for me to be able to work and to hire amazing play artists at workshops in all media disciplines, but these are a couple I just grabbed. Somebody recognizes everybody here. Caroline started a pentaculum about 10 years ago. It's for early, mid, and late career artists. It's in 5 disciplines: fiber, wood, clay, and writing. And it happens in the spring, it happens in the fall. And this was a group from last spring. Malcolm put together, Al's in there, there's some other people. Yeah. So here's some opportunities. I don't need to put my name on that and everything, but if you stay at a school long enough, they start naming stuff after you. And then they ask people to pay to name stuff after you. But after 25 years, they created the Griffith Art Educator Fellowship. It's a month-long fellowship for any K through 12 art teacher. I know this is a big conference, it's hosting some art teachers. It's a month-long, all expenses paid. You just submit an application, some of your work, a few pieces of your students' work, and answer a few questions. The Wingate Fellows, Seth talked about that. When I was at Caroline, we started a fellowship program for universities. I think there's probably 7 or 8 in Indiana. It's a full ride for 1 week workshop at Caroline, plus it includes a $300 stipend for travel. And each of those partner universities with Caroline would send 2 students on a full way. So work study, I was a work study studio assistantship for 3 summers at Caroline in my 30s, and then lo and behold, they hired me as the assistant director, program director. So look out, if you go to Caroline, it's work study, you could end up being there for 30 years. Can't go away. And they have internships for a little longer, like 3 months, and an artist in residence program is a year long. And the work study and studio assistants really are the lifeblood of the school. They work in the kitchen, they work in the studios, they work in housekeeping, they kind of bring a new vibe, energy to the school. I know that there's a panel talking about advocating for play in K through 12, right? All the craft schools do great things, outreach programs, but Caroline does some really good things. There's an outreach program where they bus students to Caroline from the whole county. That's about 900 students a year come in for a day field trip, work in all the studios. There's some. They do an Outreach on the Road program. This was through a grant. They hit six states that are Appalachian connected: West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. North Carolina. So they bring all the equipment and materials and then they go to rural areas that have small or non-existent park programs. I have three last slides here. This is a 3-year project I decided to start 3 years ago because I knew I was going to retire, and I have a pretty extensive ceramic collection that I started 40 years ago, started in Japan and continues today. I just bought some pots from Louisiana Clay and Golden Place, but students would come out and instructors would come out to my house and look at the collection, and we do pot on the spot. They would photograph it and handle it. They would ask the instructor if it was set who came out with his students. They would ask questions about how it was made, who made it, the techniques. And then that kind of dwindled after I retired, and so I thought, I think Caroline has given me so much in my administrative and creative life that I wanted to gift my ceramic collection to Caroline. So it took 3 years. I just delivered 243 pieces from my collection. Caroline not only accepted it, but they built these beautiful display cases, and it's right adjacent to both the clay classes. So if you ever go to Caroline, you can study these pieces, you can work with the gallery manager, you can handle it, take them out. This is the last Love Fest I attended. It was utilitarian clay at Caroline. Some of you were there. Anyone there? Ooh, look at that. And something Caroline does every 4 years. It's kind of on a national scope. It's 17 presenters, a little bit larger than this one, but still the same energy, the same reason we all get together because we love the material play. I wanted to end with a quote that Studio Potter posted this on Instagram about a month ago, and it really touched me. It touched me personally, but it also resonated with what I thought. You can read it. You don't have to say I, you can say me, but it really kind of reviews how I feel about our play community and how it gives back. And that's it. Thanks. If you have any questions, I'm here all week.